passionategardeners.com. That's with an S. Today I want to show you a little bit about rose pruning, and that is the rose pruning that we're going to do off season. So here I'm in San Francisco where I live, and I typically prune all roses, all types of roses, in the month of January. That's simply because it's the best month where we live in general to go ahead and start pruning before the new growth emerges, but while the plant is sort of quote-unquote somewhat dormant. However, if my camera person Judy will take a look up here to see what we've got going with roses, you can see these gorgeous purple flowers right there. Nonetheless, I'm disciplined enough at this point to tell you that those will be gorgeous flowers in a vase a little bit later on. My goal is to go ahead and prune this climbing rose, which you can see right over here. You can see actually this right over here, which we're going to go through together today. And how I go about doing that is in a couple of steps. Before I go there, I want to tell you a little bit about the differences between where I'm living, which is a mild maritime Mediterranean climate. Here it is in the 60s already. It's probably 8-ish in the morning. If you live in the East Coast or you live somewhere else where you have colder winter climates, you're not going to likely be outside right now with your pruning shears and your loppers and your pruning saw and all that kind of stuff, getting ready to do your annual pruning, which to me is a lot like a spring cleanup. It really is. It's the one time of the year where you're just going ahead and getting rid of all that crazy long growth that grew the season before, that gave you so much happiness because you had so many flowers to give to your friends and you had so many blooms and you have all that going on. So it's our opportunity to go ahead and prune all that growth back so that we can have more gorgeous flowers again in the upcoming spring, summer, fall, however your roses will flower. So that's my goal today. With this flowering rose, I'm going to go ahead and do a couple things. I am going to defoliate this entire rose. And the reason I do that is, and it's a very common practice, especially here. Rosarians do it all the time in the Bay Area. And the recommended practice is because this goes ahead and cleans up all the overwintering pests and disease that are in the foliage. I mean, there's rust, there's powdery mildew, there's black spot. These things, especially if you have organic practices, I mean, you're not spraying with these horrible chemicals, are kind of hard to control in these climates. So do the best we can, working with the soil up and doing healthy practices, and it does help, but it's not a cure-all. That said, I'm going to defoliate, and I'm also going to go ahead and prune back. So the first rose that I'll be pruning, and the main focus today, is pruning climbing roses. We'll also do some bush, shrubby type roses. But with climbing roses, the growth habit, and I'm giving this example to you, hopefully Judy can zoom in and get that. I just actually prune this off. But the point is, the growth would really be going upright. It's going to go vertical. That's what the plant wants to do. Oh, it's fantastic, but we don't want it to grow that way. We want to train it to be growing as horizontally as we can. And I'm going to go ahead and continue on with what we have here, which is a permanent framework. The reason that we go ahead and we take these long shoots, these canes, which I have already architecturally built into the framework, and train them on horizontals, is because there's this thing called apical dominance, and that is that the flowers all, if you just let it grow up right like this, want to grow just on top, right over here. In fact, take a look up there, if you can get up there, Judy, show those pink flowers, how they're just growing out at the ends of long shoots. So we don't want that. We want to do what is typically done, which is to keep them all, get these now on horizontal lines, so that the buds, the laterals that actually grow upward, go vertical, are all going to be hopefully flowering shoots. So we'll get lots of nice flowers on the growths that go up this way. So we're training the climber in a fan shape. You know, sometimes it's like this, sometimes like this. You can really get it as horizontal as you can with the space that you have, depending on what you're doing. And that, of course, you'll see that I have developed laterals in this framework that I go ahead and prune back every single year. So that's the idea behind a climbing rose. And with this particular climber, you can just basically see what I use for support is there's eye hooks in there, and those eye hooks support those horizontal canes that are trained in, that are the main framework of the plant. I'm not going to prune those out. I do prune those out occasionally. I need to get fresh new canes that are actually going to bear better flowers. But this particular rose doesn't send up a lot of basal shoots, doesn't send up a lot of fresh canes. So we work with what we have, and it is a repeat bloomer. So I do end up getting flushes in the spring, in the fall, and sort of intermittently throughout the summer. So basically, we're going to go ahead and clean all that up. I'm going to defoliate. I'm going to look for some fresh canes that I can train in. But this is a permanent framework. I support it with just some soft, green, flexible tie. Just went ahead and put this cane here just to give you an example. And if you can see right here, look at these new shoots that are growing out already. So timing is essential for this, because if I came here and these were already leaflets growing out, that wouldn't be such a good thing. And the reason why it's not a good thing is because that's when the sap is actually flowing in the plant, so it actually could bleed. And it's also not a good idea. It's not as good of an idea. So say I have leaflets coming out, you can see the shoots have already burst open. So my timing is just, I'm moving in. And the other thing is, if these emerge as leaflets and I want to go ahead and do my winter pruning or my late spring pruning, where you may live in the East Coast or the Midwest, the growth is going to be very soft and very fragile. And so it's very easy when you are pruning it to go ahead and crush it and crush the stems and create wounds and things like that, where obviously it's going to be much more susceptible to infection, to pests and disease and things like that. So this is actually quite a good time. And if you can also see these a little tiny bud coming out over here. If this were going towards the center of a plant, say I had a bush rose or a hybrid tea, and there were canes over here, I will probably go ahead and edit that, just rub it off, because I don't want that growth to go towards the center. So I have a lot more control in terms of determining where I want to go ahead and prune and how I'm going to go ahead and prune. And you can see these guys here. If some people question and they say, hey, I don't know what that means when they say prune back to one bud or two buds or three buds. Well, here's an example. I don't know. I guess you could consider this right here. Actually, here's a bud. Here's a little bud emerging. Here's a node or a bud. Here's a bud. So you could say 1, 2, 3, and an outer facing bud, obviously, if this is growing, this branch is on the outside, would be more like this way. Actually, that one's nice. And how many is this up? Well, count. It's very straightforward. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm 6 buds up. Oh, I don't want this growing towards, this one's actually not totally to the center. Ooh, I don't want this one growing towards the center of my hybrid tea. So now's the perfect time. I just rubbed it off. So I'm going to do this kind of thing all throughout the day. The other thing that we do before we leave and finish up with our rose pruning on a day like today, which is all-encompassing, is fully clean the place. It's so important to incorporate good tidiness with roses, because as I mentioned, roses have lots of critters and lots of diseases that just love to attack their leaf surfaces. So it's really important to go ahead and get rid of all that yucky stuff. And you don't really want to compost it. You don't, unfortunately. I mean, we love composting and we love saving things and reusing, but when it has disease and pests, it's not necessarily the thing you want to put into your composter. So think about that. But this place will be very cleaned up, defoliated, and ready for the emerging season from a pruning standpoint when we're finished here today. Thanks. I'm using caution tape because it's readily available, and it's a bright yellow so I can see it. I'm doing this just to make it easier for myself to go ahead and make sure I don't prune out something that I actually really want for next year. So for this coming season. So I'm choosing some laterals that are acting as laterals in that they're going up. But I'm actually going to go ahead with some of these with the caution tape, these particular canes, and I'm going to go ahead and prune them horizontally. I'm going to go ahead and train them horizontally and add eye hooks as needed, and use them for this coming season so that I get some nice flowers and some nice growth. I want some newer growth in here. Some of these are looking really nice. I had mentioned defoliating all of the leaves here on the rows, so I'm going to just show you how to do it. What I do is I actually use my pruning shears and cut about 1/8 of an inch away from the actual stem. And the reason is if you can get a close up here, and I don't know if you can, this right here, there's actually a bud, a leaf axil bud that's right in here, and you don't want to cut that. You don't want to damage that at all. So it's better to do it with pruning shears than to hand strip it. So as you can see, I'm doing it about 1/8 of an inch away from that area, and I'm going to do that throughout the entire plant. To save a little bit of time today, there will actually be laterals and canes that I'm just going to go ahead and edit more quickly, because I know I'm not going to be using them and I know I don't want them. But much of it will be a little bit labor intensive in terms of defoliating by hand. Thanks.